It's about time. Chapter 8, creatively named the 1,000-Year Door. With a ton of footwork underway, we've got a ton of bosses to challenge. We are starting with Dark Bones, who is practically impossible to lose to if you spam Shell Slam. We also get our last badge of note, P up D down P. Through our trek up the Palace of Shadow, we encounter Gloomtail, the brother of Hooktail. His encounter filled me with dread. I was honestly worried that this might be impossible too, even though it was probably less justified than it was for Cortez. Gloomtail is packing a whopping 80 HP and he sports a massive 8 attack, which alone are already really bad traits to have, but it gets even worse. Gloomtail has an attack you can't guard no matter what you try, that move being his bite. No matter what you try, that move will always do 8 damage to you, minus any defense you also have equipped to you. However, the worst move that he has in his arsenal is his Poison Breath, because this move, unlike both the bite and the stomp that he can use, pierces my defense. Having just one move that pierces my defense that he can use whenever he wants, including the guaranteed one on the first turn, means that any damage manipulation I want to do has to factor in that piercing attack as well. Those moves aside, Gloomtail has 2 signature moves that set him apart from Hooktail, being A, his Earthquake attack, which does 10 damage that also pierces, which he can only use at 48 HP or lower, or his Mega Breath, which he will use at 32 HP or lower after he's used his Earthquake attack. What he will do is spend 1 time to charge, and then the second turn he will let loose a Mega Breath that will do a whopping 16 damage. Needless to say, you do not want to get hit by that, which is difficult to avoid because we can't really do enough damage to Gloomtail fast enough to avoid it, so he's basically guaranteed to get it off. Now, as for how I beat Gloomtail, we needed plenty of danger badges, namely my 2 Last Stand Ps, my Mega Rush P, my Power Plus P, and despite not being active only in danger, also my 2 Power Plus Ps. The plan for this fight revolved completely around those badges as I Shell Slammed against Gloomtail 4 times. You'll notice how every attack he uses against me does 7 damage, and that I'm purposefully avoiding guarding his stomp. That's because Koops has a natural defense point, meaning guards withdraw by damage calculation, which is necessary because we can't guard the bite anyway, and need to factor that into account. We now deal 10 damage with Shell Slam thanks to Power Rush P, and we fall to 4 HP at the end of our assault. But my 2 Last Stand Ps divide the damage from the 10 damage Earthquake by 3, which when you use this number to divide by 9, makes the Earthquake do only 3 damage, which is perfect for getting us into peril. Unfortunately, pure strategy will only get us this far. Now we have to rely on luck. We need to use a Sleepy Sheep and have it work. If it fails, that's a death, and I doubt I have to really explain why that is. If it works, however, it is time to do some setup. So I use a hot sauce, which I got from the businessman in Glitzville, as well as a maple syrup, allowing me to dish out 2 more Shell Slams. If the first one wakes up Gloomtail, it's game over, which is nice because Gloomtail did not wake up the first time I attacked him, and now he never will. We're 2 for 2 for Dead Dragons and now skill Riddle Tower. There was also the Shadow Sirens Redux, but I did not even care to try. Like, as soon as my HP got low, I went for Super Guard because I don't care about these 3 at all. Out of how often Marilyn likes to use Lightning, I really don't think I'm unjustified because I hate relying on luck anyway. Just spam Shell Slam and be done with them. And if for whatever reason you want to question the validity of this challenge still, keep in mind we have plenty of Whack-A-Bumps still we never even tried using yet, so those could very easily carry us through this fight. Now then, do you know how I found both Cortez and even Gloomtail at some points to be impossible? That does not even compare to the utter horror I felt to Grotus. Now we've hit the danger zone. Remember how up to this point we've been shooting for consistency where we could? Yeah, not anymore. Strategy is about to take a back seat from here on out. I'm not breaking any of my rules that I've established already though, but you'll see what I mean as we delve into just how toxic this fight really is for this challenge. For starters, see that shield? That's from the Grotus X's circling around him. As long as those 4 exist, you can't touch him at all. And Koops can't reach not only the ones on top, but also near the floor either. No, I'm serious. You cannot reach any of the Grotus X's with Koops. Don't let appearances fool you. So the only way you can take them out is by using items. There were a bunch of offensive items just in the Palace of Shadow, but you don't want to use them there, trust me. Rather, use your Fire Flower if you save the one like I did. You'll see why soon after, but you want to wait on using your Fire Flower until later in the fight. Because after the Grotus X's are eliminated, Grotus will spawn 2 more in their place. He'll still be vulnerable, but you better make whatever damage you land count, because it will cost you another item to make him vulnerable again. Now what makes this fight so difficult is that unlike others where you can get by with good guarding or damage manipulation, this fight doesn't allow for either of those. Grotus himself uses primarily piercing attacks, ranging from his Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, and Heat Wave, the last of which has a visual bug that makes the animation sometimes not align with the sound cue. And if you're a normal person that relies on what you can see on the screen and not the faint sound of fire rolling by, then god dang, you're gonna have even more trouble here. Not to mention that every single attack that Grotus can use against you has different damage output. And after the first turn, Grotus' AI is entirely random, where he will always use the lightning first turn. Not guarding is not an option either, as there is no way to protect Koops from being either burned or frozen as is Mario. Especially when it's impossible to telegraph who Grotus can choose to fire his Ice Beam at, or even if he chooses to use his Ice Beam, so you have to preemptively guard to avoid the possibility of being frozen. As for how I won, well, defense was invalidated by Grotus' attacking properties. So I went out and bought a bunch of HP pluses for Mario and equipped my 2 HP plus Peach for Koops to make them beefier. I also withdrew all of my Ultra Shrooms, as this was a better time than ever to use them, as we have no choice but to outright survive and then strike once and hard. Something you'll notice is that by tanking the damage and healing accordingly, this fight is a lot more manageable. It may take a bunch of our resources, but fortunately this is the only fight we have to do this for. Right? Well, no. Unfortunately, the worst has yet to come. Immediately after Grotus, with no opportunity to save, we immediately had to battle Bowser again, with Kami freaking Koopa. Strap in, folks, this is gonna be one wild ride. So, an important thing to note is that Bowser hits a lot harder now, and with his bulky 70 max HP and 2 defense, you're going to have a hard time KOing him. But he isn't a big threat. Kami is. As you can plainly see, she is airborne, so Koops can't reach her without items. What is nice is that items will temporarily force her to the ground for a few turns, meaning you in theory can deal more damage to her before she gets her broom back. And 50 HP isn't too unreasonable to take a boss like her down. So what's the problem? She can heal. Whenever her turn rolls around and Bowser's HP is below full, she will sometimes restore 8 HP to Bowser. She can heal herself too, but only when her HP is 30 or less. As you can imagine, spending turns being blanked by Bowser is a waste of time, so you have no choice but to spam charge a ton until you can score a KO. But you simply can't do that. Know also that Kami will also attack you, and she likewise uses defense piercing attacks. With both Bowser and Kami on the offensive, you just don't have the HP to survive even with Ultra Shrooms. In fact, you actively need one of the two to stop attacking you for a while to gain enough time to charge. Even then, your items will only carry you so far, as you just don't have the resources available to you to outlast as Koops. Nor the damage output. The only way that Koops can even compete with Kami Koopa's healing is if he's in danger. Even with that, you're hemorrhaging HP while Bowser is infinitely able to chip you down. Even FP was a problem, as I needed to use Shell Slam for the damage to drop Kami as low as I could without her healing. Not to mention using Shell Shield. Unfortunately, I had no choice but to abuse Wacka. I'm sorry, but it was the only way this could even be remotely possible. By the way, in order for that to be the case, I had to keep retrying Grotus because he can make you lose too many Ultra Shrooms just trying to survive. At most, I can only afford to lose 2. Any more than that, I simply can't win. I also needed my stopwatch to keep Kami out of commission for a while, so that I could potentially finish her off faster. Otherwise, she can heal herself the instant her HP drops to 25 and rise out of range for Koops to KO her, all the while being in death range for Bowser to finish me off. Listen, there were tons of ways this fight could have and did end up going south. Like how Kami can make herself invisible on one of the 2 chances I had to attack her, rendering the entire attempt failed. But in my pursuit to turn Koops from a helper to a hero, it happened. The sole circumstance that could save me from what felt like an inevitable disaster. An FP bingo. Solely because this bingo happened, the FP I had was enough to keep Mario alive via Shell Shield. And Koops eventually managed to dethrone Bowser as the king of the Koopas. All of my items were gone. A massive yes was shouted as I stood tall exposing this foul beast for the fraud he was. The nightmare was slain. Only one boss left. Before we continue to our final battle, I went and restocked on items. I brought the best I could muster, while leaving Waka alone, of course. My badges are here and my shell is toned. It's time to brave our final battle. The Possessor of Peaches, the Demon of Darkness, the Witch of the New Moon, the Shadow Queen. This fight, unlike any of the previous ones, is much more straightforward, but with a massive 150 HP and ability to heal herself from stealing either my or Mario's HP, she is by no means easy to KO. It also was worth noting that as far as the first phase, she has her first 3 attacks scripted. If you use Shell Shield turn 1 on Mario, and then she attacks Mario with her Lightning Bolt, and then after her Power Lift, she uses another one of her attacks, this time her Hand Drag on Mario's Shell Shield, you can effectively con her out of 21 HP of damage. But that's the extent of strategies that I can think of, and even that is luck-based, because if she doesn't cooperate, she can just attack whoever she wants. That bonus boost sheet that I also got from the Battle of Cortez finally comes into play here too, because I needed to be able to survive against the second part of the first phase, where she becomes invincible. Minimizing damage this entire fight is mission critical, especially when you're taking 3 hits at a time every turn, which you can't do anything about. All you can really do is Shell Slam or Power Shell as much as you need to, which fortunately will also be enough to fall her left and right hands, which for some reason can be hit by either Shell Slam or Power Shell, but not the freaking Grotus X's. There's a problem here, can you see it? Regardless, because of how this fight functions, you can potentially leave her with only 1 attack for her whole turn. Leaving the left and right hands after the turn where she first switches them in will almost guarantee your death. Give her as few opportunities to heal from you as possible. As for the Dark Pulse she can do when she charges, keep your wits about you and keep your HP at a safe level, or hopefully you burn only a single life stream to revive both Koops and Mario. For the true final battle, you do have to worry about it turn 3, but you have a scripted Shine Sprite bingo to help you here, so don't fret over taking any damage. Get that bingo lined up, miss action commands if you need to keep that bingo there for a later time, and when your HP is low or for whatever reason your FP is too low, let that bingo rip and then throw all you can at her as best as you can. After a long, agonizing struggle where Koops was a single hit away from death, we got the better of the Shadow Queen, ending the challenge once and for all. Awesome. This was certainly an adventure. Before this run, the only partner-only challenge I tried was with Yoshi, which I have to say was also a lot of fun to do, but this one was a lot harder. It also involved a fair bit of luck, and I guess if you wanted to judge it by the rules that I established, it's also technically impossible because a few bosses tend to take too many items, and airborne enemies can be a real big migraine. So while Koops will find himself at the top of our rankings, I don't think it's gonna last long. Especially since I believe that literally every other partner barring Miss Mouse is also gonna be able to handle Atomic Boo, which we had to skip entirely in this challenge. But for what he's worth, good job Koops. This was a really fun challenge to do, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video too. And not gonna lie, I feel like I already broke the fourth wall by saying that, so you know what, I'll just say it right now too. Subscribe down below for more videos. I'm gonna be making a lot more Paper Mario and Bug Fables content on this channel. If you're interested in that, then of course subscribe. I think you're gonna love what I have to share. My next challenge will be through this game using only Goombella, and Goombella will have a much easier time with bosses, but there's also a lot of enemies that she flat out cannot touch because of elemental weaknesses or say being spiky. I'm very curious just how many shot points will be needed for that challenge in particular. So I'll see you next time, and until then, thank you for watching this video.